All right, everyone, welcome back. Dave Chase here with another edition of the Conjugate Dads. We decided to make it plural, Dads Podcast, because we're both dads and we both practice conjugate with my lovely co-host, Justin Commandoris, for episode 6 of the pod. Justin, how are we today?
Wonderful.
Okay, well, we were just talking off the air about what really grinded my gears versus what grinds your gears, which is... I was watching this interview with a WWE superstar. I won't name because I actually really like and respect them. But he was talking about how when he's on the road, he does these workouts and he'll post them on his YouTube channel. So people who specifically like him will go watch his workouts. But he was like, oh yeah, I just pull up like Corey Perkins, who's on the Ladder app, which this isn't against Corey. More of a question to you, pose a question to you and our listeners. You're following a guy on the Ladder app versus hiring a coach specifically for your needs and your want as a WWE superstar. So kind of wanted to open that up to you. It pissed me off because I think as a professional making, I'm guessing, a substantial amount of money, wouldn't you want to hire a specific coach for your individual needs as far as athleticism and what you need to do in the ring? And aesthetically too, because I think we had talked about this.
I would 100% agree with that. I think that at that level, regardless of how much you know or how long you've been doing it or whatever, everybody knows their own body best. But at some point when you're on the road like that, you got to imagine that it's hard for you to have to try and focus on I'm just going to do my own program or whatever. And so again, following something that's one-off, that's not tailored to you as a professional athlete, kind of just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Maybe he was just giving that particular person a shout out. I don't know. Maybe there's something special about that particular app, but it looks more like what they call functional bodybuilding. But again, if you're going to put the bodybuilding connotation on it, we already know that the rep range doesn't really give back to being an amazing athlete as far as all the movements that you do and stuff. And with wrestlers, you not only do you have to look good, but you have to be a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, and then you were also saying too, before we started recording, is not only do you have to be a phenomenal athlete, you have to move well, but you have to be able to be charismatic, engaging on the mic. You said this. Who are the most famous wrestlers when they come to mind, or famous entertainers? They are the people like Ric Flair gets you going. Hulk gets you going. Yep. Triple H gets you going because they all know how to talk really well. But then you can talk all you like, but you have to be able to wrestle, like you said before. Those guys are super athletic. They're super, aesthetically good looking. So it makes a world of sense to hire someone specific for your needs as far as the training program. But that was just my grinds my gears thing. I don't know why it really just made me not angry, but it just kills me to think that there's people out there that are making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in industries that wouldn't hire someone. And this isn't even a plug for you or me. It's just hey, hire someone that's specific for what you need. So,
especially he's probably in his 40s now. So doing a basic routine for somebody that's, doing, he is a big guy, but he's, sure. I'd say he's more built like a tight end. And so he's still doing high kicks and jumping off the rope and doing some, certain athletic movements.
47.
47.
Okay. 47, 267 pounds.
47, it's when neither of us know what it's like to be 47, but I know what it's like to be 42. And I know how that feels and performing all those movements and stuff. So it takes some serious specificity to the specific thing that he's trying to, perform. Right. And so again, I can see definitely why, that grinds my gears too, obviously, because I just think that it can be done better, as with a lot of situations with a lot of athletes. We can go into LeBron's workout, definitely can be done better. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But ultimately, there's got to be some specificity for the thing that you're trying to do, and something that's just, again, functional bodybuilding or whatever. It's I know what that stuff looks like. It's usually not super functional, and if it is, they're positioning it with higher intensity stuff. So you're doing box jumps for sets of 10 or 12. What you and I both know, you're not doing jumps like that in a fatigue state and producing as sharpening, your rate of force development as much as possible.
67 pounds too. We're not even talking about even at 47 and 267 pounds, you're doing sets of 10 on a box jump. That's not going to be great. I
No,
don't think.
no. And yeah, that
Yeah.
takes us back to like CrossFit last week.
Yeah.
There are people out there that have, paid subscriptions that are going to be way better for that person than that thing. But again, and it's not to knock. I mean, I wish I had my own subscription, but it's like that's one of those things where you have to have a big following. Again, you're still not getting specificity with the subscription. And when I use that word, it's not personalized, right? So you're not getting something that's catered for what Dave's needs are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and then the other problem that leads into like what we're talking about today, guys, which is max effort versus dynamic effort. I do think that we have a very big misconception out there that max effort is something that it's not. And I do think that, max effort should be exceeding that 90% intensity or reps, and where you're measuring your reps in reserve and you're measuring or you could use the RPE or rate of perceived exertion, or you could say intensity level, whatever it is, you have to have that closer to the edge of, if 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And we have people that just say, oh yeah, I'm going to go all out for a set of 20. That isn't max effort. And I wish that we had that. So we are going to talk about max effort today. We are going to talk about dynamic effort. We may split this into two just because we were just talking before about this, and Justin had suggested this may be a two-parter because it is something that we can go into the very, very nitty-gritty, and we want to make sure that we give the best information possible out there. And it is something that we both are very passionate about. So there is quite a bit that we're going to have to say on. So Justin, really for everyone, what is, in your simplest terms, what is max effort training?
So in a nutshell, it's lifting 90% or more of a 1 rep max for 1 to 3 repetitions, obviously with the focus on the movement's technique. But when you look at the maximum effort method is really the best method. And there's sub-methods to the max effort, by the way. But overall, the max effort method is saying that I'm going to lift this weight that's as close to my 1 rep max or 3 rep max as possible. And that's going to cause me to globally fire on the maximum amount of motor units that I can possibly, and fast twitch motor units that I can possibly recruit in that brief moment in time. And we know for a fact that there's really no faster way to get strong outside of the max effort method. Okay. There's a lot of other methods to get strong that do work, but the max effort method is typically the most optimal in terms of getting there really fast.
Sweet. Simply put, you literally just Google like max effort, like method breakdown, like go on Westside Barbell or blog rather, putting up something. This is March 12th, the basic template breakdown for understanding programming strategies. This is very basic stuff. It's like everything you just said to recruit the largest motor unit. It just makes the most sense to do 3-week waves so you can get, working up to a top single, a top double, a top triple, having good accessories that are going to supplement that main movement. And I do think we just have people that beat themselves into the ground with a barbell back squat 3, 6, 9, 12 weeks in a row. And then it'll be like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break this week from barbell squat and I'm going to do hack squat. But it's still heavy. There's no deload. It's not the same movement. They think it's the same movement. And they're convinced that they're still getting stronger when I was just listening to that other podcast that I sent you. I'm not going to shame them. That's very sciencey, but I do like it. My buddy, loyal listener, Gage, if you're listening, I know you are. He said it to me. It's very sciencey. I actually do like it, but they were talking about progressive overload and how you can't definitively say you're getting stronger and it needs to be certain rep ranges. And obviously there's a ton of variables, but they didn't say, hey, don't increase the weight, don't increase the reps. They said you can increase the reps and the weight, which we did talk about in episode 2. So even with a ton of science or no science, you can still increase reps and sets. Can we say you're getting stronger? That's why we do the 3-week waves. That's why we train at a higher intensity level on max effort today. That's how we know, because you increase the percentage of your 1 rep max.
They were essentially just saying their definition of progressive overload should be defined as progressive loading over time. right? So
Correct.
everything that they were
We're just
saying,
changing the words.
yeah. So like if the average person gets onto that, they're listening for 2 minutes and then shutting it off because they have no fucking clue what's being said.
And that's why
right?
I liked it, because the two guys are doctors, and hell yeah, I get it. I actually really like your definition. I just said for the average person, it was a little too sciencey, and I can understand why some people get turned off.
Well, yes, and then it's like, how long can we beat around the bush and not give the actual answer that people, okay, cool. So this is what it is. Can you please explain how we execute it, right? So the average person that has that curiosity, right, that shows us a high sign of intellect. They want to know why they're doing something. But if you constantly beat around that bush of why you're doing something, you don't actually give the answer, then like, what's the point? So when you look at max effort method for, say, the general population, first of all, the number one question that's going to come about is, well, why does the average mom or dad need to utilize the max effort method? First of all, that doesn't mean that everything's context dependent here. So we're not taking people directly off the street and throwing them on, a max effort deadlift because we need to see where they fail to get their weaknesses. Obviously, we're going to build someone up over the course of 6 to 8 weeks through a modified GPP phase so that they can have the work capacity to work up to being strong enough or fit enough to actually pull, a heavy trap bar or squat, a box squat or a back squat, and then incline or flat bench or whatever max effort method you use. I think there's a couple of like key things to really take away in that. We know, we've said this 1,000 times, that strength is the mother of all qualities, right? Strength will never fail you. And no one has ever said, I'm glad that I'm weaker. Like it just doesn't. And if they do, they don't really understand.
Oh, and that was the thing we talked about at the end of last week's, right? Where I said we need to come up with commandments for the show.
Yeah.
Because I used to listen to the Boston Sports Radio show. It was a drive time show, so 2 to 6 p.m. local time. And they would have like commandments for their show that they'd follow. And I would say that our first commandment is strength training is king. If you don't strength train, I think it's definitive enough to say that that is an area that can drastically improve your health, fitness, your physical fitness, your mental health, and make your body and your life and your quality of life better. So the commandment number 1 of the Conjugate Dads podcast is strength training is definitively something that everyone should do.
Right.
And that is, of course, disclaimer, like unless you cannot physically, you're not able to because of injuries or certain diseases, disorders. Yes, we know that, but
sure,
training, everyone should strength train if possible. Everyone should do it. There we go.
100%. I mean, if you're wheelchair bound, is you trying to get up out of that chair and stand maximum effort? Oh my God. When you're a 6-year-old and you see the biggest boulder or stone when you go on a hike and you try and pick that sucker up, did you get hurt? No. You just tried to pick it up. You produced as much force as your little body was capable of producing to try and lift that stone. So it's one of these things where people get this very negative track record with heavy lifting. They automatically think heavy lifting equals bulky and this and that. That's just not the reality. In fact, the lower rep range, meaning 1 to 3, is extremely unlikely that we're going to recruit in such a way that it's going to create hypertrophy, right? So your body's not going to respond to a max effort movement by breaking down a ton of tissue. It's going to respond by producing as much force as possible against that object that your brain deems to be moved, or else Jesus is taking the wheel at that point, right? And so there's direct relevance, because if you're somebody that just, as from you or I standpoint, I like the idea that I can, if I absolutely need to, at any time, at any point during the day without warming up, I can snatch up all 3 of my children, throw them in my arms and on my back, and be good to go for any amount of time until I just get so fatigued I can't hold them anymore, right? Like, it's not, that is a special thing, right? And so this method becomes very important for the general population, because the general population needs to be able to lift things and do things to protect themselves from getting hurt. So the stronger you are, the worse your form can be, but contextually speaking. So if I bend over to pick up a chair or something like that, if I'm really strong, I'm not throwing my back out. Versus Granny bends over to pick up a chair and she throws her back out, or Grandpa throws his back out. Yeah, because you're not strong, right? And you can stay strong. It's all context dependent to the person, right? So that's where this method comes into, numero uno, right? Like being strong isn't bad for anything, regardless, right? The second portion of that method that kind of parlays into longevity is that we're rotating those movements every week, right? Or bi-weekly or something like that. So it really just depends on the coach. But for most people, we can keep a movement pattern very similar, but change something. And when you change something, you're not allowing the injury side of things, and you're keeping the longevity side of things like front of mind. So maybe one week I do a box squat, maybe the next week I'll do a front squat, and maybe the week after that we'll do a deadlift or something like that to kind of give that pattern a rest, right? And then typically, yes, week 4 we'll do an unload or a deload, and then we'll get back to it on week 1. Some people, the newer people, the kids, for instance, the teenagers, they can go a very long time without ever having to deload, because they're going to accidentally deload on their own by going on vacation or something like that, right? But the average 40-year-old, they need a week to let all that work kind of settle in. Okay, so.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the other thing too is that we've done is switching the main movement every week is something that we have done, and then not switching the movement for 3 weeks and then having to unload. So, I mean, I just wanted to go into the nitty gritty of like on a max effort, let's say we do a top set of 3 on week 1. Now for our listeners, week 2, what's one thing you can do?
So week 2, you can simply change the reps.
Right.
It's that simple.
Great.
Yeah.
Hey, you're doing 2 more reps. So if we were doing 3 sets of 3 or find a 3 rep max in those top 3 sets, and then the next week, hey, you're going to do 2 sets of 5 for your top 2 sets. It's like that's 9 versus 10. So you're doing really 1 extra rep. Let's see if we can equal the amount of weight, or we can equal the amount of reps, or both. Like it's just either way, or increase the weight and the reps. So I mean, just for people who are like, well, how do I, design this? You can go back to episode 2 for all things programming. But just because you did that box squat week 1 doesn't mean you can't just go right back to the box squat. And I would say that I love the 3 weeks in a row, because I don't have to think about it. I know I'm box squatting again. Today's Thursday that we're recording this, as we always do. I know on Wednesdays I'm most likely doing a squat or a deadlift variation, and then the next week I'm going to do the same squat or deadlift variation, and I love that. And then when you change it, I think I get a little angry at first. I'm like, damn, I was just getting used to doing that. Now I'm getting excited about it. Yeah. Versus some people do like that versatility, and I feel like that's why it's so hard to do true max effort training in like group settings. And I'm not shitting on group training, because I did do small group training in gyms when I was coaching inside facilities versus online. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that group training and then still trying to hit the max effort method, because you are under a time constraint when you are doing small group training.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the thing is, it's even something as simple as like, can I just change where the position of the bar is? Can I do high bar, mid bar, low bar? Can I change the foot stance? Like for just a back squat, there's a multitude of ways that you can make it different and keep that same pattern, which I think for a lot of people, it's like you, is the best thing to do. What I would say for your situation is, when we do keep it in, it's because I'm looking to get a quick result out of that movement. So I'll use more 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, and 2s versus just taking you all the way to a 1. But what we have to take in consideration is after 3 weeks, like the wear and tear on that really starts to, for somebody that's over 30, really starts to kind of add up. So then we'll move back to doing max effort work. So we're kind of doubling down on all of the neurological changes and adaptations that we got from the brief maximal tension work, and we move that back into the max effort work. And then you get to see the big turnover from that. This isn't necessarily like for Dave, this isn't necessarily that main movement, the max effort movement isn't necessarily about building muscle. It's more about how many motor units that are fast can I call upon it in one split second to be as strong as possible. And then I'm just sharpening his nervous system more and more. And then we use all the secondary accessories and all the supplemental work to build muscle and however he wants to build it. But again, that's going to go back to what the person's goals, wants, and needs are. Right. So if Dave says, okay, I want to go into I want to build some more muscle in my lower bodies. Cool. We're going to definitely use the max effort method, but we'll use the sub method or the sub maximal effort method or brief maximal tension with a little bit higher reps, 5s and 6s, maybe 7s or 8s once in a while to create more hypertrophy in the muscle, but that's still functional hypertrophy. Okay. So the method itself is perfect. Anybody can utilize this method. It's just completely understanding that you have to make adjustments based on what your needs are. So if you're somebody that's never used this method before and you're like, okay, I'm trying to kind of make sense of this, you're starting your workout. You can do any other thing after you squat or deadlift on a lower body day. You can do any other accessory movements that you see fit for what your needs are. But if you're starting with your session with a max effort movement, pick something. Probably pick the thing that you're the worst at, right?
Yep.
So if you suck at anterior loaded front squat patterns, do a zombie squat or a front squat to a box or a full front squat or heels elevated front squat. Pick any of those and work yourself to, let's just say a 3-rep max, even though the ones are probably safer if you're leaving a rep or 2 in the tank, which you should always do. With the research, we know the strength and muscle part of it doesn't really matter as long as you're leaving 1 in the tank, because those grindy reps for the older population tend to have more wear and tear on us. So it's good to leave a rep in the tank there. We will still go all out, and Dave knows this. There are times where I'm like, we're getting it today. Today, I want to know where we're at. We have to know where we're at, okay? And then from there, now what you're doing is you're accruing maxes, okay? So I'm going to use these maxes to track my progress. Yes, we're going to use them for dynamic effort percentages, but I'm going to use these maxes as a way to see where I'm at and to make sure that I'm getting better. If you don't track this stuff, then it really doesn't matter, right? You have to know what's going on.
Well, yeah, and you answered a couple of my questions that I already wrote down before. I was just kind of looking through them. I mean, why do we do it? You already answered that. Who can do max effort training? I think that we both can say anyone can do it with the right goal in mind. And then the word max effort, like we had talked about the definition of 90% and above. If you've never lifted before, and this is the first time ever, I would say it's fair to say you should probably avoid going to 90% the first week that you've ever done any sort of organized weightlifting activities. But would you say that it's not bad if everyone in general population with the right form could try max effort with, supervision and the right form?
Yes. I mean, anything can be a max effort movement.
Right.
Provided that it's the most you can do weight wise with 1 to 3 reps. So if all you can bench is the bar, like it's not going to hurt you to take a 1 rep max with the bar. Like there's no reason to think that unless you're like old and frail or something like that, obviously.
Sure.
But I typically tend to think I would take somebody through a GPP phase of 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, and I would keep them in that, we'll say 70 to 85% range if we can even figure out that range doing basic things. But they just need to be able to show efficiency and technique with essentially motor learning with certain movements that you want to go into, whether it be squatting, deadlifting, benching,
and
anything.
And then I wrote here, like, who should avoid it? I mean, I think that if you have certain conditions or injuries and, you've broken your back multiple times, and should you be doing 1 rep maxes on deadlifts? I mean, probably not. But, if you're doing Everything else, though, if you're doing the hyper and you're doing a ton of rehab and you're getting better, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to do a 3-rep max on good mornings. Okay, that's fine, but within reason, right? Maybe your 3-rep max is more like a 5-rep max, but you only do 3.
You have to have the general physical preparedness to be able to handle that. Most people can't fire high frequency, high threshold motor units enough to be able to, scratch the surface of it being max effort. For example, if you take a novice female and they can do 5 to 6 to 7 reps with 90% of their 1-rep max. But if you add 5 pounds, they can't get it for 1. That's kind of where GPP comes into play, and their body's just not ready for it. I think this is one that's not talked about often, Dave, but people that have very bad mental health issues, because max effort work is so taxing on your central nervous system, enough of that stuff over time could potentially cause them to have more anxiety and more depression because their central nervous system is shutting down from the amount of CNS work that goes into putting in a 1-rep max. So they really have to pay attention to how they feel. And not enough people talk about that. There are a few. There's a few people, 1 or 2, that were featured on Dave Tate's podcast for Elite FTS that
the table talk.
Yes, the table talk. It was very subtle how they mentioned it, but the guy mentioned he was struggling because he had used anabolics for so long. He was struggling with a lot of depression and anxiety.
Oh, is this the guy who stopped using after?
He had to, yes. And he had to change. He had to come away from the heavy singles, specifically on deadlifts and squats, because of how taxing they are globally to the central nervous system.
I think I did listen to that podcast.
And so and I also say this because I've experienced it, right? If I pay really close attention to how close I'm getting to, complete failure. If you train to max effort to complete failure, and then you do all your accessories, to complete failure, whether they're unilateral or bilateral or whatever, eventually you're going to pay a toll mentally because your central nervous system has to be able to recover. And if you're constantly barraging it with high CNS style training, it takes its toll, especially if you're older. So you have to pay attention to that if you're somebody that either maybe you take antidepressants or you just kind of struggle with depression on and off or seasonal depression. Just pay attention to if you're starting to notice your mood change, that means it's probably time, which, by the way, that can happen for the average person too. If you get to the point of super compensation and then you go beyond that where it's functional overtraining and then non-functional overtraining or overreaching, then that's where you get to the point where depression starts to kind of set in. So you have to pay attention to that with this method. Now, most people can't ever get there. It takes somebody that's highly twitched up, that's very strong, right, to be able to do that stuff. And a lot of people will say the stronger you get, the less volume you really need to achieve what you're after. That's probably true just from a central nervous system standpoint, but that would be the one situation where if somebody was having some severe mental health issues, they probably don't need to get any closer than 2 reps in reserve on a max effort movement.
So see, I actually wrote down here, let's design around the max effort. So 1 to 3 rep max for your main. And then, just based on everything you said, just for everyone listening, accessories, 1 to 3 reps in reserve. So then we're not overtaxing the central nervous system, if I'm hearing you correctly on this. And then I think that it's important that, something you didn't mention, but you did mention it, is making sure that, you take care of your mental health and you're taking note of it. And I'm not saying go get yourself a diary, but I think it's important to write down somewhere, either on your phone or in a journal, or even recording yourself, writing down how we're feeling on these certain days after training. So then you can keep track. Now, obviously you can go to therapy and you can go to certain other places to get these out vocally to a professional. We're certainly, not claiming to be mental health professionals, either of us, but we have noticed these things. You've already mentioned it. I've noticed it too. It's do I think I'm one of the strongest people I know? No. But after I feel taxed, I'll text you and say, yeah, today, like, I mean, that whole workout just took me out. Like, I was just crashed the whole rest of the day. And what do? I focused on recovery. I'm pounding the Gatorade, the water. I'm trying to get in calm environments. With an 8-month-old baby, it's kind of hard to avoid stress. But it's like, how can I minimize my stress? So what do? Get ahead of it. Do chores, stuff like that. So as far as recommendations, 1 to 3 rep max, accessories 1 to 3 reps in reserve, and then jotting down somewhere how you're feeling that day, and keeping track of after a max effort day and after a dynamic day, which is the next topic, how that workout responded. So I mean, I think we do this in the app that we train on, right? It's writing down the intensity and how long did it take you, and everything matters. Like training, rest intervals matter. And then, the big thing that you just mentioned in our chat here, you can't drive yourself into the ground 24 hours after 24 hours after 24 hours. And Justin just wrote it here, 72 hours between heavy lifts, the same body part. That means that if you're doing your max effort lower body on Monday, the next time you really should be training it is Thursday or Friday, not on Tuesday or Wednesday. I do legs on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, that doesn't really make any sense. You should do legs 2 days a week, lower body 2 days. The other thing too that kills me, which we don't have to get into, is like, I want to do just legs, but then they don't train like their back and their lower back, and they really don't train their core ever. And your max effort, guys, can be like, hey, I'm going to go as heavy as I can on accessory movements to failure for a glute ham raise or a reverse hyper for a set of heavy feeds. It's not like, 15, so that means I'm not supposed to feel it. I mean, the word max effort, you can kind of, I'm going on a rant here that I can't really get there, but that is also GPP, but then also max effort that's preparing you for the next max effort lift of a good morning, a box squat, a front squat, a back squat. Everything matters. Just everything matters. That's really what I wanted to
cap and that's on. No, and I think I can kind of bring some more clarity for your brain there in that.
Yeah, it's cloudy.
That's why we don't use body part splits. It's either going to be full body or the top part of your body and the lower half of your body, right?
Sure.
Because ultimately, if I said, Dave, I'm going to do chest and back today. Okay. And they decide they're going to do incline. Okay. So I'm doing incline. I get it off my chest. So from here, what drives the rest of the movement from here to here? Right.
Triceps.
This guy right here. Okay. So you're doing triceps too. And you're doing shoulders too. So naturally, people don't realize that when you do body part splits like that, you are training other body parts. So if I do chest and back today, and then tomorrow I do bis and tris, tomorrow I'm not going to perform bis and tris because I just did as good as I could have if I had that gap in there, because I just trained heavy push-pull the day before. So how can I be at, perform at the top level for all those movements to be able to recruit as much as possible? If I'm somebody that's a bodybuilder or whatever, you can't. So that's why we say, number one, 72 hours between body parts or between upper and lower sessions of heavy or dynamic effort, because you need that rest time to be able to perform the next workout, because today's workout is only good as yesterday's recovery. So maybe that's commandment number 2.
All right, so we've got number 1, everyone should strengthen, and then commandment number 2 is, we said today's workout
is only as good as yesterday's recovery.
I like that. 2 commandments in one episode.
Just while we're going to take 10 seconds and touch that topic, I'm going to quote Stan Efferding here. If you are strength training 7 days a week, taking creatine and all the other supplements and eating a healthy diet, but you're only sleeping 4 hours a night, you're stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels.
Stan, one of my faves.
Love Stan. Probably the best functional power athlete diet creator with the vertical diet that's ever existed. And oh, by the way, you can use that diet for anybody. It's so simple to follow. It's amazing. You can hit up either one of us and we can explain it intimately. On how to use it for whatever style that you're going to go after, whether it be cut or bulk or maintain or perform. Anyways, so the next important thing why we use max effort is to establish weak points in the body, whether that be posterior chain, whether that be upper back, whether that be your lats or your triceps. There's just so many different things, your hamstrings, which is part of the posterior chain. But anyways, there's so many different things that can break down. Now, again, why is that important for the Gen Pop, right? It's the hierarchy of, if I have weaknesses, can I perform this movement that's going to get me overall a higher level of strength for life, right? If I have weaknesses that drive up this lift, do I need to train those weaknesses? I think we know the answer to that question,
Sure.
right? So
Yep.
just as a very simplistic example, if you're somebody that deadlifts and you keep good form until you get into that 1 to 3, 90% range, right? And then when you break the ball off the floor, your knees fly back, your back hunches over, and you lift the whole entire movement with your back. Your back is taking over for lack of strength in the glutes and the hamstrings. It's really that simple to be able to see. And for most people, somebody man, my back is so sore from doing X, Y, and Z. Well, so that they automatically think, oh, my back must be weak. No, the things that aren't sore are weak, right? Because
the back did way too much overcompensating and then said to you, hey, stop doing this or I'm going to continuously hurt.
So like if people complain, oh, like I don't like to, now again, context here, but I don't like to deadlift because it hurts my back.
Right,
so
right.
9 times out of 10,
I said this to you when we started.
Yes.
Do you remember this? I was like, oh, like deadlifting hurts my back. You go, that's interesting because that means that there's things around your back that are weak. It's not that your back hurts. It's that your back is saying, hey, seriously, bring up everything else because I'm tired, boss.
Yes. So again, from an anthropometry standpoint, right, which is just the measurement of limb lengths versus different lifts that people use, if somebody has a short torso and long legs, they're going to deadlift better. And if they have a long torso and short legs with short arms, they're going to squat better. It's just naturally how that works, right? So yes, those people, like for me at 42 years old, if I pull straight bar from the ground, my body doesn't feel real great for the next couple of days. It is what it is. And I know my hamstrings are pretty strong because I can do one Nordic curl or whatever, right? Yeah.
Sure.
But ultimately, like at that level of strength, maybe my hamstrings could be brought up even more so my back, which has always been strong, doesn't take the brunt of that movement. Now, for 9 out of 10 people, let's say 99 out of 100 people, if your back hurts from deadlifting, it's likely because it could be a litany of things. It could be upper back. It could be your abs from bracing. It could be your lats. It's likely your hamstrings and your glutes. And and your hips. It's hamstrings, glutes, and hips. How do I know that? What do we do all day? We sit and we hunch, right? So, right, everybody's like this all day, right? So naturally, I know using the law of averages that glutes, hamstrings, and abs and hips are going to be weak, right?
Sure.
Because they're turned off most of the day for the most part. So that just completely settles the whole deadlifting issue, right? So you have to know what your weaknesses are in order to be able to pick the right exercises. So this is how you would create, this goes back to programming. This is how you can create the perfect program for yourself, is understanding that there's certain things that I really need to double down on. And it's likely the things that you hate. And people want to bitch about the things that they hate all the time. God dang it, Justin, why do you keep giving me Bulgarians? Well, your hips are weak. Right?
Did some yesterday. Yeah, it did.
Even if your hips aren't weak, what a freaking amazing exercise for just all of the things, right? From feeling dead to blowing up your hip flexors, making them bulletproof, protecting your knees.
So that should that be commandment number 3? If you want to get stronger, do the things you hate. I like that.
Thou shalt do Bulgarian squats.
Yeah, actually, commandment number 3, everyone should do Bulgarian. No, we're kidding. I mean, you should, but
there are people that will argue that that's a terrible exercise,
and that's okay. Opinions are like the place where you poop from. Everyone has one. Now, you don't have to necessarily agree with everyone's opinions, but they are going to be very present in this world.
Yes, they all stink.
Like everyone's poop hole,
except my wife. So
I don't know what to say to that. Okay,
let me just touch on that Bulgarian thing for a second.
Yes, sure.
There is first of all, Context. There's a stark difference between an actual Bulgarian split squat and a rear foot elevated split squat. So, for example, what you did yesterday, even though it may have said Bulgarian because that was the title of the video, it was actually a rear foot elevated split squat. So a Bulgarian split squat, believe, is measured that back foot elevated at 6 to 8 inches only. Okay.
Okay.
So you have a traditional split squat where your foot's on the ground, then a Bulgarian, which is like 6 to 8 inch elevation, and then rear foot elevated, which is anything above that. Where most people say it's a terrible exercise is what they're doing is they're overloading it to the point where they blow a hammy or an adductor or an abductor during the movement because they're overloading it so much. So they're putting a bar on their back and they're putting 225 on there. And then they're so there's so many things going on.
That's where they probably should be doing like a Hatfield.
Correct.
Holding on to the rack.
Hatfield
if people don't know what a Hatfield is, you're holding onto the rack and then doing the split squat or a squat variation. But like, why would you not be honest with yourself? I feel like that is another commandment, is be honest with yourself as far as what you're prepared to do and what you can do. So if you don't do a dynamic warm-up, it's probably not smart to do a 1 rep max on barbell squat.
Yep.
Be honest with yourself is just an overall. So I might actually put that as just
honesty is the best policy.
Yeah.
I think what happens, Dave, is that with the Bulgarian or the rear foot elevated split squat, the people that get injured is they lack the prerequisite mobility that occurs when you go through that movement pattern.
And they're not willing sometimes, in some cases, to do the work to get to that point. They just want to do it because they see it online, or their coach does it because their coach is very trained and experienced. They say, you know what, I want to look just like, this goes back to the CrossFit episode, like everyone who does CrossFit, I would say some people are in the range of like, oh, I'm going to look like this CrossFitter. That's great, but that is their full-time job. You are a doctor. You have to be at the hospital 12 hours to 16 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week. That's not realistic. Again, be honest with yourself.
Honest with yourself.
These things are going to take time for you to get there. But you mentioned that with max effort, like everyone can do it. 1 to 3 rep max range. Accessories, build up the things, the weak points, do the things you hate. Commandment number 3, if you want to get stronger, do the things you hate, like rear foot elevated split squats, but then be honest where you're going to be sitting. Are you prepared to do it today? Have you done the work prior to hit that movement with the best possible form? We are not expecting you to have 100% the best form ever, every time you do something. But then something we didn't even mention is we're not asking you as a listener to be the most capable about knowing your form, because you should be recording yourself. And if you're not, you should at least be looking at if you're working out at a commercial gym, I get that. But let's just cut the bullshit. I know that you're not excited about watching yourself on camera or setting up your tripod, but just do it. Like if you're training with someone and a coach says to you, hey, just record yourself, just do it because they're asking you to, and you need to be a good client. It's not about you being like the best client as far as like, oh, I got my workouts in. Great. You should be getting your workouts in. But you also should be doing what the coach asked you to do. So if the coach says to you, hey, I want you to weigh yourself every week and write it down. Hey, I want you to take progress pictures. If you send your coach progress pictures, that's fine. But people that I train in the past and currently, take your progress pictures. And if you don't feel comfortable sending them, then don't. But you still need to take them so then you can at least look back. I want you to be able to look back and say, wow, I actually lost weight in these places. I can really see it. Oh, I can see more definition in my back or what's it. And then something you just wrote in our chat again. On accessories, we need to rest between those max effort. 60 seconds is not enough.
Yes.
For 60 seconds, I was talking about accessories. Is 60 to 90 seconds between between sets for rest. But then 60 seconds in between sets for a max effort. I mean, what was that, yesterday? Or Monday, you said, hey, rest 8 minutes. We were doing 3-minute rest intervals for bench press, and I was just toasted. And we went 8 minutes, and I lifted so much better. Oh, wow. More rest is going to create, the ability for me to do more reps. So who would have known?
Yeah. So you
commandment number 5, rest intervals are important.
Yes, rest intervals are important. You cannot in the 90% range unless, again, you're somebody that's just not currently very strong. In that situation, it would be okay. But if you're somebody that's pretty strong and you're getting up there with your lifts, you have to rest a minimum of 3 minutes between any attempts above 90%. And the key with max effort method, and really this is just via the research done at Westside, was that you want to have really 1 to 3 attempts above 90%. So that's something else that's kind of like a cornerstone of max effort. That allows for more of those high threshold motor units to get recruited. It just ensures that if you fail at that 1 rep in reserve at 98% or at 100%, at least you got some work in above 90%, which again still gets us what we're after. As an example, let's use Dave, okay? On Monday, whatever day it was that you were just pooping all over yourself with the bench press because you felt you didn't do enough, or not that you didn't do enough, but that you weren't strong enough. Overestimated Dave's reps on bench. So I gave him 4 sets of 6 when really it should have been 4 sets of 5. And so I like to do that every now and again with Dave, because sometimes he sends me videos and, oh, this is a max. And I'm like, bro, that's nowhere near a max because you just did it so easy. So I like to give him an extra rep so that he can kind of overachieve. Well, he ended up doing, first set he got 5, second set he got 5, then 4, or something along those lines. Or maybe it was 3, then 4.
It was the 5-3-2, and I was fucking pissed. And then I did the 4 after the 8 minutes.
Yeah. My response is, number one, like, my bad, I gave you 1 more rep than what you did, but it's not like you dropped it on your neck or anything. You just knew when to rack it. So that was positive. Number one is that he learned something about himself where he knew what his reps in reserve, and he was safe. But number 4, 2,
be honest with yourself.
Yes, be honest with yourself. Number 2, I know just based on looking at his videos, the amount of tension that he created on all those lifts, right? So I knew that he got the work done in that 85 to 95% range. Specifically, the last 2 to 3 reps were grindy reps. So his body had to fire on all the motor units it had in order to lock the weight out, right?
Yeah.
So what that tells me is that you could be having a bad day. Max effort, by definition, is the maximum amount of weight you can lift in whatever rep range you choose for that day. Not what you did last week or 6 years ago or whatever. It's the dropping the bar to your chest and not lifting it is not doing you any good. Now, if you get it up to here and then you fail, that's good because we learned something, right? But not being able to even get it off your chest just means that you're not being honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, you have to take that into consideration when you're using this method, because even if you're not performing at a high level for that day, for whatever reason, you're stressed out, you didn't sleep good last night, so on and so forth. If you're not to the point where you don't know your body enough to where you can do a back off lift that day or some bodybuilding stuff, and you're still going to go through with the max effort method, you're still going to get benefit of hitting reps that are above, say, 88%, as long as there's some tension on the last couple of reps, right? So Dave still recruited a ton of high threshold motor units, even though he didn't get that 6th rep, because that's what I put on paper. It's like,
and,
well, no.
And the rest of the workout, we still worked on. I'm trying to pull it up. On the rest of the workout, we still worked on areas where we need to improve. So I need to improve lats, weighted chin-ups, right? Need to do that. Ultra close grip bench.
Triceps.
And then reverse grip bench over row, which we know that I need to work on my back at all times. And then face pulls, sets of 100, 80, 80, going max three sets. These just make the most sense where people are, where do I need to work? Oh, if I fail the bench press, I mean, it's the same thing as you said with the squat, what are my weak points? Okay, well, if I failed on a squat, we know that their hips, their glutes, and their hamstrings are probably the area, and then their core are things that we need to work on. Okay, if you fail on a bench, what are the 3 areas that we probably need to work on? We need to work on upper back, lats, triceps. Like that's it.
Here's programming 101, like hierarchy stuff, okay? So when it comes to weaknesses, okay?
Yep.
So we've talked about in the past how it's really hard to serve 2 masters, right? So I can't possibly give the totality of all efforts to everything and still expect that everything's going to go up. you can do everything, but it's got to be structured appropriately, right? So right now, if we say, Dave, let's pick two things that Dave really wants to bring up, and let's just say it's his triceps and his back. Okay, so now we know that with his supplemental movements and his first accessory, we can take those to 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. We can push those really hard every week. Below that, let's say it's biceps, shoulders, traps. We're not going to complete failure on those movements because right now we're working to bring these up. Well, what happens when these come up is these are still down here. So now I can pump the brakes here and then bring these up. These still stay here. So now if I want to take my bench from, say, Dave's bench is 375, 380 right here. Okay. I then have to improve these weaknesses because even though they're stronger now, they still are lower than the shoulders, the traps, the upper back. So now I have to work to bring these up. And so as you get stronger, it's a constant, never ending approach to bringing up your weaknesses. So just because your triceps got stronger and your back got stronger doesn't mean that we're just going to put those off forever now because you have maxed out your potential on your triceps and your back or whatever. Because the overarching theme is strength. Right? Strength is the mother of all qualities. And if we want to be strong, we have to assess and bring up those weaknesses in order to continue to get stronger, especially as we age. The last thing you want is to get a really strong lift and then have something else that is kind of always lagging behind. It'd be like if you constantly did upper body and you never did lower body, right?
Sure.
Eventually, you're going to be so messed up and your posture is going to be all out of whack and all these things just aren't going to work right. You will just top over. Eventually, you're going to hit a point where your body's like, no, sir, I'm a genetically enhanced being from the last 2,000 years. We don't get out of balance like that, right? Like there has to be some strength balance. And if we have these imbalances, something bad's going to happen, right? So if you're so top heavy because all you do is upper body and you don't do any lower body, eventually your upper body is just not going to progress anymore, no matter what you do.
Well, I was going to say too, I think this is a DeFranco commandment is like, you should be training your posterior chain twice as much as, the anterior, like the show versus go.
Yeah. So like his thing is 4-1 or 4-2 on, or it's 4-1 on, pulls versus push. Yeah. I think just balance is fine. So like if I do 2 pushes, I'm doing 2 pulls, which most of our workouts, you're going to have a vertical pull and a horizontal pull. Right. And you're going to have, we won't always have a vertical push, but we're always going to have a horizontal push or vice versa. It really just depends on the person.
Yeah. So we could say, well, I already said if you want to get stronger, do the things you hate, but we could also say balanced training is the best prescription. Not certain area. You can't just look at someone and go, I want this, I want to have these shoulders and I want to have this chest, but I don't want to train anything else. That's like saying, I only want to lose fat in my face and in my sides, like my obliques. That sounds good, but that's not going to be how that works.
So ultimately, one word that gets tossed around in the sports science realm right now is bilateral deficits. And so, meaning my right quad is so much bigger and stronger than my left quad. Can you imagine what that person looks like squatting? They're going to squat like this, right?
Right. So that was me with the rear foot elevated split squat yesterday when I was.
You're tipping over one way, right? So it's like by training your weaknesses, you're going to eliminate bilateral deficits. And again, this just goes back to programming 101. It can't be all compound movements. We're not going to do a bench press and then a decline press and then an incline press. No, we're going to pick one of those. We're going to give it the effort. And then we're going to pick something that really supplements that movement directly.
And it goes the other way too, Justin. I mean, you see people that don't have any barbell training in their workout, and then they expect to get stronger. The barbell is going to get you the most strong possible within, obviously, context matters, and the training program matters, and the rep range matters. But also, why would you not want to do a barbell bench press if you're trying to figure out how much you can bench? I want to see how much I can dumbbell press. That's great. We can train for that. But barbell bench pressing more will, in theory, help you train, a heavier amount of dumbbell presses.
So when we talk about, because this is important, we start our workouts with the most taxing movement, right?
Yep.
That could be whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a power clean, it could be an incline press. When you talk about compound movements are they're globally taxing, meaning you're using your whole body and everything in your system in order to move that weight. So let's compare a leg extension to a squat. Squat, you're using everything from head to toe to move the weight. A leg extension is very much just the quad, right? Maybe a little bit of hip flexor in there.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit of hip flexor again.
So that's going to be the difference. We're not going to start now. If you're warming up and doing some leg extension, like winning warm up stuff, cool. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not going to go and give max effort to a leg extension and then try and do a max effort squat. That's important for people to understand. Outside of the warm up, we're starting with the most taxing movement. That's a compound movement. Okay. Yes. Can you do a max effort dumbbell bench? Yes. Can you do a max effort Bulgarian or rear foot elevated split squat? Yes. Can you do a max effort RDL? Yes. But again, those are still pseudo compound movements, right? I don't really see the efficacy of doing a max effort leg press, because I've seen guys load up 37 plates on the leg press and they can't squat 225. And that's a real story. That's a true story. I've seen that with my own two eyes. So it's just not the same. Okay, number one.
And it's not a metric of strength, in my opinion, either.
No.
Compound movements are a metric of strength.
Yes. It doesn't mean that because the argument is squatting is the best movement to build your quads. Let's back up. It's not. It's probably not top 10. Okay. Yep. Squatting is top 2, deadlifting and squatting are top 2 for building overall strength. Okay. In the lower body. But is squatting, if you look at the angle that most people hit parallel when they squat, or even above parallel, the stretch, the tension in the stretch and the lengthening position is not anywhere near as good as a long lengthened hack squat or a leg, even a freaking leg extension. Like, you're not getting anywhere near the lengthening there. So there's context to, we're talking about strength here. Your muscle building hypertrophy work is going to occur in your accessories, okay, depending on what that person needs. Just throwing that out there.
Yep. No, for sure. So I guess my commandment 6 went down to keep everything as balanced as possible when it comes to upper and lower body. Don't just train, and even more specifically, like you said, I don't do any deadlifts, but I want to be strong. Sorry, we need to do a deadlift variation, whether that's trap bar or putting some bands on there and getting you to maybe use a barbell in some instances, or maybe just taking the barbell out. That's okay. Let's do max effort movements. Yeah, pseudo compound, and just saying, hey, like, we're just going to do dumbbells because you're really in your head. It's going back to the CNS thing and your mental health. Maybe we just don't do barbell training as far as deadlifts go, but you are going to do a deadlift in general, just a little bit of a variation.
Flamed for this, but ultimately, I really like the trap bar. I just think that
it's more functional.
For
there's nothing wrong with it.
Yes, sure. Because it puts the load in line with the middle of your body instead of in front. So it's a whole lot easier for somebody that struggles with the whole back situation, that they can perform that movement and not have to worry about getting super rounded. Right. Yep. Plus, it hits the quads a little bit more than I can't remember the guy's name, but he's like, oh, you mean the quarter squat bar? Like, it's like, yeah, I get that. But again, what are we after with max effort? Producing as much force as possible in that momentary effort, right? So it doesn't matter per se what the movement is, as long as we are calling on as many motor units as possible.
What's more functional in your mind? Being able to trap bar deadlift X amount of weight, or deadlifting X amount of weight, but then, Justin, you need to carry 2 big things of luggage, because you guys are going to Disney World, let's say. Oh my God, I'm doing a trap bar deadlift.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing.
Or groceries.
Groceries. You do it every week. I mean, whether you go to Costco or H-E-B or your local grocery store or a wholesale club, like I said, Costco, like, you're going and you're getting a bunch of stuff. When you go back to school shopping with your kids at the end of the summer, what's going to happen? You're going to grab all these bags, whether they're reusable or they're the crappy, plastic bags. you'll be doing a trap bar deadlift variation.
This is where the context of specificity really gets muddy, because the worst of them all, Dave, is the people that will argue that bench press is not sport specific to really any sport. Where I'm going with this is, let's back up here. If we're using the max effort method or the sub-max effort method or the brief maximal tension method, right? The goal isn't necessarily to have a competition level bench press, right? The goal is I'm trying to produce as much force and output as much force as possible. That is it. So if the bench
it's not really the number, it's the speed and the force.
The funny thing is, Dave, is you like baseball, right? So like in the past, they have said pitchers and baseball players in general should not bench press. But we know for a fact that, or even fighters, right? When you reach back and you throw, right, like this, what is happening as I'm following through? What's flexing, right?
Tricep.
Oh my God. So if I can train my triceps and my upper body to produce as much torque as possible, as much force and horsepower as possible, that's going to carry over to whatever it is in life that I'm doing. Sure. We're not trying to be powerlifters here, right? Where it's just A to B. That's it, right? The goal is that we're trying to call on as many motor units as possible. So specificity with specific movements kind of goes out the window, right? So that's where I can feel comfortable saying, Dave, that's badass that you trap or deadlift 600 pounds, but this guy's going to be like, well, it's not a straight bar. It's like, I don't give a shit. It's not even about that. It's about the fact that he hit as many motor units in that range as possible, which then carries completely over to when you do a box jump. When you're hopping up and down on a 42, easy as day, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you see?
230 pounds. And that's, to me, I'm impressed with myself at 230 plus pounds at 33 years old, being able to jump as high as I ever been able to, plus being able to lift as heavy as you said, like, running as fast as you can, but also lifting as much as you can. You have to pick the master that I'm serving is, what is the strongest that I can be? Not necessarily the fastest, but then strong also can be hey, I want to jump as high as I can. That is strength to me.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, relative to your body mass, right, it's going to carry over. If you get stronger at lifting yourself up and down with weight, right? Yep. Naturally, you're going to be able to jump higher, and you're probably going to be able to sprint faster, which is something that we've never really toyed with, you and I. But it's something in the future that, just as an example, sprinting is like the one thing that you don't want to do max effort work without some prerequisites in there, because you will blow something off the bone. I know I'm fast, right? I'm still fast at 42 years old. I can still produce force rapidly, right? If I go out right now and just try to sprint 100% on flat ground, something bad's going to blow off. And I know it because of how strong I am. My muscles aren't ready to fire because of gravity. How much force you put into the ground when you sprint is far and beyond more than anything you could do in the weight room.
This goes back to, I don't know if you saw, like, the Jason Tatum, the Celtic star, got injured a couple weeks ago when he tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
Or ruptured his Achilles, which I know that they're using instead. When that happened, it's like, oh, well, Emily asked me, because we were watching the game. She said, well, how did that happen? I said, well, that was kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back. I said, you don't just get a tear from one thing.
It's overuse.
It's over time, and I think that, not that I'm going to shit on the Celtic strength and conditioning staff. I'm not doing that. Maybe there is something that was lacking in that program that we could have switched. And I'm sure now in the future, post-surgery, there will be something in there that they're going to go, hey, by the way, we're going to add this too. Kevin Durant came back from a similar injury. I think Klay Thompson did as well. I could be wrong on that. But it's like, you now are going to say how these guys have remained healthy for the most part after these surgeries and these rehabilitations. So they're going to say, hey, now we know. So now we just need to be better. And they're going to start implementing those in the future. So you're keeping the balance training, but you're also being honest with yourself. Like you just said, I'm not just going to go outside and sprint. You couldn't pay me to sprint. You couldn't pay me to play flag football with some friends down the street. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, outside of like freak injuries, which do happen, especially in the NFL, I would hypothesize that the likely nature coming from these injuries is either the bilateral deficit thing, there being a weakness there, and even more likely to where it's overuse, right? There's just too much data that we have in data tracking now where we can see with all these different, what's the freaking, I think it's called like Slingshot or something like that, where they use all these apps and they put these guys in this gear and it tells them like what their HRV is and what their VO2 is. If they're
you talking about the little, they call them like the bras. Like actually Emily said, like, why are they wearing these? Like, they look like sports bras. And I said, it measures everything.
Yeah, it measures everything, miles per hour, all that stuff. And if somebody is performing below 90%, what a lot of these coaches will do is they will back them off in practice. Hey, we want this guy to run less routes in practice because he is not recovering. He's going to be injured soon if we don't take care of this, which is great. So there's just too much data out there now for these guys to be blowing off their freaking Achilles, right? Yep. And so I tend to agree with you in that you're not shitting on the strength staff because it's likely a lot of these superstars, like LeBron, they use their own people. Right? Yep. And they're doing all this stylish Bosu ball and bands and all this extra shit.
The Derrick Henry training, I think, is actually I think it's cool.
It looks cool, but I'm telling you, and again, that's a freak. So it's hard for us to.
He's a one of one. Yeah.
He's the ACT N3 guy that has like 16 copies, probably, right? So like he's a freak. That guy, again, probably not gonna sustain a ton of serious injuries just because he's naturally freaky. He's naturally strong, right? So we know that strength in bad positions is better than weakness in bad positions. So he can get in those bad positions and not get injured. But ultimately, how many exposures are these guys getting to like the amount of ground contact forces that you have from jumping up and grabbing a rebound? Because if you just think about basic physics, right? Everything moves towards the earth at 9.8 meters per second, and then it doubles the higher you go and triples and quadruples the higher you go. So if I go up to dunk and I drop back down, that's like, 27 meters per second coming back down to the ground. Well, if you absorb that much force over and over and over again, and you haven't had enough exposure to that amount of force coming into your body and expelling from your body, then you're going to get injured. So I think that, and I hypothesize that it's the overuse and the lack of exposures from these ground contacts, right? So that's why, to go back to the sprinting thing, you can't do max effort sprinting without ever sprinting or having sprinted for a long time, because you don't have exposure to that high of rate of force development. Okay, so it's like that much force being put. There's a number that Usain Bolt, that they tested him, and they were testing the amount of force that he puts in the ground every contact he made because of how fast he was. And it's an exponential number. It's a mind-blowing number. It's thousands of pounds of force that he was putting into the ground with every step.
Yeah. Well, I was going to touch on this because I was actually thinking about the Patriots running back. Do you remember Robert Edwards? He played for the Patriots in the early 2000s.
Sounds familiar.
So he made the Pro Bowl, and they were playing beach football, and this is 1998, and I'm just reading about it right now, and Peyton Manning was playing cornerback because it was just a fun game. Of course, he's a quarterback for those who aren't American football fans. But Edwards went up, R.W. McCorder, I don't remember, and then Charles Woodson, who, of course, is one of the better cornerbacks of all time. He was the last two-way player before this Travis Hunter guy, of course, came up pretty important. I know Deion played a few snaps. I'm talking about full games in college. But he went up for a pass, and it says his knee was at a weird angle and his leg was in jeopardy. So he ended up tearing his ACL, MCL, and PCL, partially torn LCL, suffered nerve damage, and sliced an artery in his leg. And then the doctors feared they may have had to amputate his leg. He was out of the NFL within a few years, but then he played in the CFL for a few years as well. But it's those sorts of things, putting yourself in those situations that even if you are a Gen Pop person listening to this, I am not a professional power lifter. I don't do any competitions. Justin doesn't. Maybe he will. Maybe we'll coerce him into doing one. But it's the He's shaking his head. But it's the same thing. Like, do you put yourself? My mom just gave me my super old snowboard, and she's like, "Okay, hey, you can get back into it, or you can sell it." I'm not going to put myself in that position because now you're out of the gym for 6 to 12 weeks, if not more, if you hurt yourself lower body wise. Beach football, not a good idea. When we go to the beach, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put my fat ass in a chair, or I'm going to go walk into the ocean and then walk back very slowly because all of that is just an area where I may get hurt. So it's not worth it. And I know that sounds shitty, but that's going back to number 4 for our commandments. Be honest with yourself, and then know that this is a lifetime journey for weightlifting. And max effort is definitely the best method if you want to figure out how strong you are today and then figure out where you need to work. It's not only just testing your max effort, it's really subconsciously testing your weak points and how can we work those areas. And I think that is a perfect way to end the max effort part of the 2-part series, max effort versus dynamic effort, unless you had one parting note.
One more small thing just to add to that is max effort is also a show of your will. Not everybody is capable of grinding with 101% or 100% of their 1 rep max. They'll likely give up. Whereas you well know there's plenty of times, especially like with a trap bar, where you pull a weight and you're like, man, I can't break this off the floor. Step back, rest, and try harder. And a lot of times your environment will allow you to actually get to the level. That's why Westside was so great, is because they had guys constantly betting on, real money on who could lift the most weight. And you didn't want to lose. So you sometimes were able to go above and beyond what you thought mentally you were capable of. Everybody most likely can hit 90%, right? It takes a special person to be able to go above 90% and grind reps and not get scared. And the thing we know about that 1 rep max being safe is that number one, you're more likely to make mistakes with doubles, triples, 4s, and 5s than you are in that 100% range than you are with 1 lift. Number one. Number two, if something goes wrong, right, the Golgi tendon will take over and shut it down. It completely shuts it down to where you just drop the weight. So it's likely that you're not going to get injured in that range. It's really when people go well above what they're capable of. Again, like, be honest with yourself, right? Be realistically honest with yourself. Most people on this that are going to listen to this can push a little bit harder than they can, but the people that are really strong that maybe listen to this should be very honest with, I don't need to take an attempt that's above Dave, that's above X amount because I'm in the garage by myself, and letting Jesus take the wheel isn't always the best way.
You know what? I might add commandment number 7. The Jesus spot is the best spot. I won't do that.
Okay, if we're gonna squat to a max effort, let's do it inside the freaking power rack and not outside.
I do that. I'm getting my new rack, by the way. I'm getting it Saturday. Yeah,
I know, but a lot of people they'll send me videos and they're taking a triple and they're doing it outside of the rack, and I'm like,
no weight on the other side, so it's gonna topple over.
Freaking, God's gift to Chinese weightlifting. You can't just flop the ball off your back if you fail at the bottom, right? Yep. Do it in the freaking rack or get a spot, right? Yep. Be safe. That's
and I actually think that it should be its own commandment is safety matters, and the subtext to that is, if you're going to fail, if you do fail, know how to fail. Like you just said, if you fail on a bench and you come down, you should know, hey, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to go this way with it? Am I going to go this way with it? If I'm going to fail on a squat, which way do I go? Do I drop and fall forward? This is a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. But some people, I've done that before, and it's stupid. I should put up my spotter arms. I should make sure I have a spot if I can get one. And if you don't get one, and you do fail, everything else needs to be set up properly. You need to have your safety arms at the correct area. So just be prepared. I mean, I don't even know if that's a pretty wordy commandment, but
I think
safety will save you. How about that?
Yeah. I mean,
safety allows you to fight for fight another day. How about that? Is that a good commandment?
If you're squatting in a power rack and you have the arms in, but they're all the way down at your ankle, you spend the time to put them all the way down there. It's not going to do you any good, right? figure out where your fail point is just in case something happens. People pass out all the time. It's not about I'm going to fail. It's about if something bad happens that I have no control over, then I can safely fall back into the rack and it's not going to drop on me and do all kinds of damage that you may or may not recover from. So, yeah. Oh, another commandment is thou
number 7?
Thou coach shall do no harm.
There we go. I like that. Number 8. So number 8 is thou coach shall do no harm. Okay. I need 7 to be less wordy.
Okay.
What was 7? It was about safety and knowing how to fail.
It should
set up for safety and know what to do if you fail.
Sure.
All right. To wrap up, I'm going to give a list of all the commandments we have so far. Commandment number 1, everyone should strength train. Commandment number 2, today's workout is only as good as yesterday's recovery. Shout out Stan Efferding. Commandment number 3, if you want to get stronger, do the things you hate. So that's specific to bringing up weak points. Commandment number 4, be honest with yourself. Know how to auto-regulate, right? Specifically, know what today is versus yesterday. So that kind of goes back to number 2, just being honest about everything. Don't do stupid shit when you're 40 plus years old or even 30 plus years old. Commandment number 5, rest intervals matter. If they're there in your program, you should use them. Stay off your phone. Use your rest intervals. Watch the clock go down like you're counting sheep. Commandment number 6, keep your training balanced. Don't just work on just upper body or just a certain area of your lower body. Everything needs to be balanced. Commandment number 7, set up for safety and know what to do in the event that you fail. So have those arms up, like Justin said, in the correct spot. Don't put them all the way down at the bottom. That's not going to matter when you're failing on a squat. Commandment number 8, thou coach shall do no harm. So that is specific to your coach needs to set you up for success and put you in the best positions possible. Having those conversations with your coach both ways. Them explaining to you why you're doing something, you explaining why you did or did not do something, or why you did it.
I have 9.
Okay.
Thou shall train their accessories just as hard as anything else.
Okay. I'm going to say accessories. I was going to say, yeah, accessories need to be trained seriously. How about with intent? Okay. Commandment number 9, as Justin said, accessories need to be trained with intent. So as he has said several times before on his page, your abdominals, your core is a muscle and it needs to be trained as such. It needs to be treated as such and trained as such. It is not just something you throw in at the end of your workout. Oh, I'm going to go do, I really do think commandment number 10 could be something to do with like zone 2 cardio or something like that.
Conditioning. It 100%.
Yeah.
I'm never getting off that. It's just not going to happen. Like if you want to live long, you really need those 2 things, and it's strength and it's conditioning, and that's just the bottom line.
How about if you want to live longer, do your conditioning? All right. Well, that's great. Thanks for listening, as always, to the Conjugate Dads podcast with Justin Commodores and myself, Dave Chase. Part 2 will be on the dynamic effort. We really wanted to focus specifically on max effort, what it is, how to program it, how to help everyone listening. We do really appreciate it. And as Justin probably says every single episode, but I'm going to say it this time. If you have not, if you're listening on Spotify, give us a 5-star review. Hit the follow button. That will help shoot us up to the charts so we can help more people. As you know, that's our main mission. If you're listening or watching us on YouTube, same thing. Like, share, subscribe. We definitely want to reach as many people as we can. Send it to your friends, your family members. We are not here to tell someone, we don't have absolutes, but these are some commandments to lay out. And I think if you can help your family members or your friends or anyone in your network professionally that can benefit from strength training, I think this is the podcast for you. So we would really, really, really appreciate if you would do that. Justin, any last comments before we say goodbye?
The late great Louis Simmons used to say, it's not the way, it's a way. So everybody's going to have an opinion on what they think is the best. And Dave and I believe strongly at looking at everything and evaluating the things that work best for us and our people and getting rid of the things that don't work best for our situations. So just remember, this isn't about it being the only way. It's a way. And it's a damn good way, but it's a way.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Have a good day.